All right, so what I want to show you first and what we're going to practice first is a fairly simple and effective way to show uh, images to your production staff, either in terms of just research images or costume collages, or sometimes final design. And I often do that in a PowerPoint presentation because it's easy to work with digital images. There's some ability to modify what they look like, and it's a fairly clean looking way of getting your ideas across. I always think whenever you're going to present anything in a production meeting, it shouldn't just be a series of random pictures. A lot of people will use things like Prezi or Pinterest boards, but I think the problem with Pinterest boards particularly is how do you get somebody to look through them and not get confused? Because if people cannot see what you're presenting clearly and understand it, they're going to start asking questions, they may not understand it, and it can actually create a hassle down the road. So what I'm going to do to demonstrate this technique is I'm going to recreate something I did for Ordinary Days that actually started out as research images and then became a final costume design. And this is also, I think, a very valid way to do costume designs if you find drawing them and painting them really to be challenging. So here's what I'm going to do. I have created a PowerPoint, or you can use Google Slides, document, and then I know that the show is being set in New York City. I always like to show images with some sense of the world we see them in, either the principal color of the set behind them, or sometimes you can scan in the scenic designer's set, or something that will be reminiscent of what the scenery environment is going to look like. Just be sure that what's ever behind the costume doesn't overpower it. Because I know that we have been talking in the production meetings that the director wants a skyline of New York City behind everybody. I went to the website and I went to the web and I searched New York skyline, and I know we're going to use a silhouette. So there were some silhouettes that popped up, and I like this one over here. And so what I did was I went ahead and I saved that. I took a screenshot of that. I actually opened it in another tab, took a screenshot of it, and then I'm just going to go ahead and slide that into my PowerPoint image. Now you can decide what you want to do with it. I want to make this a little bit bigger so it fills up a good portion of the slide. I don't care that it fills up the whole thing. I think I might pull it up here a little bit. I'm going to crop it, I think. Let me get rid of some of this up here. And then let me crop it on either side. After years of doing this, really, truly, the care with which you do things does matter. I mean, you can imagine if you walk into a class and the teacher seems terribly unprepared, your belief that the teacher is going to give you a meaningful class is probably kind of challenged. And so I always try to do the best work I can. I don't want this to be as bright, so I'm going to go up here to transparency and I'm going to pull it down to about here, just so I have a little bit of background that looks like the world of the show. Okay, so now I need to start putting together all of the bits of the costume. So I'm going to design, I'm going to give you an image for Warren. In the show, Warren is the nicest human being you will ever meet. He self-identifies as kind of a nerd. He's gay, very uncomfortable with that. He loves museums. He spends his life in museums. He's a frustrated artist. And so the whole point of Warren is that he has to be completely, completely endearing to the audience, and we have to fall in love with him as soon as we see him. Also, I don't want him to be particularly fashionable or well put together because of some of the other characters in the play. So what I wanted to create was this really, really sweet, completely approachable, a little bit rumpled, wrinkledy clothes, mussy hair, kid that wears like his favorite cartoon t-shirts, all that kind of stuff. And so what I did then was I went to the internet and I looked for images that represented what I think his pants and his shirts and all of those things looked like. And so, well, I'm not going to show you how I found them. What I simply did was image searches until I found the images I liked, and then I took screenshots of them. And you also kind of want to think about don't just do one character at a time. Be sure you're thinking about the whole show. So what I've got over here, you can see on the screen, is I've got a little folder that has all of the images that I've chosen for Warren. And now I'm going to kind of I'm going to put them in my collage here. I'm going to make this a little bit longer here, right? And so the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to pull in the pants for Warren, right? And so I'm just going to kind of build this in layers. So let's pull in his shirts. Warren is a frustrated artist, and so I really wanted that to be important in his costume. All right. So what I'm going to do when I do this, I kind of try and think about how to build these so they make the most sense to the people looking at them. So there's his pants. I'm going to pull the shirt down here. And I think he's the kind of guy that always wears some t-shirt like art matters, art is the most important thing, right? But I also think he's a really great guy who likes kind of cool cartoons. So here's a SpongeBob SquarePants shirt. I think he's going to wear that over this. So I'm going to put that underneath, if you will. I'm going to put that underneath the t-shirt so we get a sense of how that will actually look on him. I don't need the blue in here, so I could exclude that from the image, or I'm just going to kind of cover it up. Right now, I know I don't like these shoes that he's got on in the image, and so I want him to have Vans on. And so I found I found the shoe I like. If you're doing a contemporary show, this is also a nice way to kind of shop it. Okay, and so I'm just going to reduce that. I'm going to slide that down here so we kind of get the sense that those are the pants for that, right? I think he wears a hat. The Guggenheim is really important to him in the play. And so I'm going to put him in a Guggenheim hat. Actually, when we did the show, I went to New York and got a hat from the Guggenheim Museum, which was one of the most expensive pieces in the show. And none of the things that I'm putting in here are required by the script. But as a costume designer, it's my job to try and give him as much detail that tells us who he is, in the same way that all of you dress. Your jewelry, your hair, your shoes, your shirts, your socks, your underwear, your lack of underwear, all of that indicates who you are, and that's what I'm doing here. In the show, Warren has to have a whole bunch of leaflets that he passes out, and so I figure he's probably got a bag from the Metropolitan Museum or one of the other museums, and so that's why this is one from the MoMA. I'm thinking it needs to be a shoulder bag. It needs to be something that he can carry a whole bunch of leaflets in. He makes up all these leaflets for the artist that he kind of works with. It's actually kind of taking advantage of him. So the bag in the particular case of this show was something that the director and I talked about early on, that Greg wanted him to have on his person some kind of satchel that he could carry all of these flyers in that have to happen in the show, right? And so then I think it's also important to give a sense of what you think their hair looks like. And certainly by the time the show was designed, I knew who the cast was. So I could look for specific hairstyles that I knew were appropriate possibilities for the actors that were cast. And because we wanted Martin to be a little bit unkept, I looked for images of basically that kind of unkept, floppy hair on boys, right? Some designers think you should never really be very specific when you put faces on designs. And there's a reason for that, I think, so that we don't think that designers are stepping a line and creating people that can't be there. But in this case, we knew who it was. I also wanted to give the director an idea of kind of a shorter hairstyle. I think at the time we didn't know if the actor would agree to cut their hair. So kind of here's two options for him. And I think I'm going to actually superimpose these. So I'm going to cut this, cut it, and I'm going to paste it back in, and that will put it on top of this other image, right? And then I had gotten from management the logo so that I could actually include the actual show logo on the plate, right? And so now what I've got here fairly quickly but effectively, like I think you can tell by looking at this, what I'm thinking as a costume designer. So certainly this is a great way to do a preliminary design. this is a great way to say, hey, director, here are my basic ideas, right? Without spending a good deal of time kind of drawing everything. And so now I've basically got the plate together the way I want it. And so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the text, and I'm going to simply just add a text box here. And I'm going to do Warren, and I think this was his Act 1 costume. And then I'm also going to put the actor's name here. And Lefson. And I might change, let me just change this one. I tend to not like to put the actor's name and the play in the same text. So I think actually I'll keep that one, and I'll change this one to something different. And let's bold that. So now what I've got is a fairly simple and quick costume collage that anyone can do. The trick here is just don't throw a whole bunch of random stuff on the image, on the slide. Think about how to arrange if it makes sense, and then kind of follow a similar format for all of the other pieces in the show, right? And so then when I'm done with that, I will want to save it. And then ultimately what I would do is I would upload these as a PDF to either the Dropbox for the show or keep it for myself. But I've learned to always keep original documents in the creation format as well as the format I'm distributing them in, right? So this is what you're going to do for the first project. You're going to create a character costume collage for the play that's assigned. All right? I hope that's helpful.